After the trial, nothing was safe.
The knock came just after dawn. 3 sharp raps that made my pulse stutter. I hadn't slept, just drifted in the blue half-light while the refrigerator hummed and the Audi's shadow stayed parked at the end of the lane. When I opened the door, 2 people in dark coats stood on the porch, badges catching the early sun. "Mr. Cole?" the woman said. "Agent Diana Ruiz, FBI, this is Special Agent Nate Keller. We'd like to talk about Ridgeway Estates." They stepped inside like they already owned the air. Ruiz was mid-30s, hair pulled tight, eyes sharp enough to measure lies. Keller was older, the kind of man who could fade into a crowd even in a suit. They declined coffee and got straight to it. "We've been reviewing Judge Ramirez's referral," Ruiz said. "We believe your case overlaps with a broader investigation. Bank fraud, shell companies, campaign finance irregularities. Ridgeway is one spoke in a wheel that turns through 3 states. I just stared. "You're saying there are more victims?" "More developments," Keller answered. "Same signatures, same lawyer notary chain, same LLC templates. We've been tracing money from Summit Capital into PACs and real estate trusts. The email your attorney produced confirmed our suspicion that Hastings Group was laundering investment income through fraudulent land conversions." I almost laughed. "So I've been fighting a mob with spreadsheets." Ruiz didn't smile. "A sophisticated one. You did the hard part, kept your records clean. Now we need your cooperation." They asked for access to my videos, tax receipts, even the angry letters Hastings' lawyer had sent. I handed over everything. When Keller boxed the files, the weight that left my hands felt heavier than what stayed behind. Before they left, Ruiz said quietly, "You may see movement soon. If you get contacted again, by them or anyone claiming to represent them, call me first." After they drove off, the neighborhood was too still. The Audi was gone. Only tire marks in the frost. For the first time in months, silence felt like relief instead of threat. By noon, Lydia called. They looped us in. "Federal task force. I'll coordinate discovery so we don't step on their toes." "Does this mean it's almost over?" I asked. "It means it's just getting bigger," she said. "But now they're the ones running." The next days unfolded with an uneasy calm. Reporters camped outside Summit Capital's Denver offices. Drones hovered above Ridgeway's neat cul-de-sacs. Homeowners started emailing me, polite, tentative messages asking if their deeds were safe. I told them the truth. Not yet, but soon. On Wednesday, my son Luke called from the restaurant. "Dad, 2 suits came by for takeout. They said they were federal auditors, asked what kind of cars the Hastings drive. I told them a Tesla and an Escalade. They left a tip big enough to pay rent." We both laughed, and for the first time in a long while, it sounded real. Then Friday happened. I was driving back from Lydia's office when the radio broke with a bulletin. Federal agents executed multiple search warrants in Denver and Aspen in connection with the Ridgeway Estates investigation. They named Cassandra and Preston Hastings among those assisting agents. I pulled over. My hands were trembling on the steering wheel. Somewhere behind the shock was a strange emptiness, like finishing a marathon you never trained for. By evening, it was everywhere, photos of agents carrying boxes, reporters quoting sources close to the probe. The internet that had once called me a fraud now treated me like a folk hero. My inbox filled with apologies, interviews, offers. I ignored them all. Lydia called at midnight. Searches went clean. They seized digital drives, financial ledgers, everything. Ruiz said your recordings matched GPS tags on their permit filings. That's what made the warrants airtight. So that's it? Not quite. There's one loose thread. County records officer named Harlan Dean. He processed every Ridgeway permit. He disappeared yesterday. Disappeared? Phone off, house empty. His car was found near the foothills. FBI thinks he's running or being run. I didn't like the way she said that.
Meaning?
Meaning he might have data backups or debts. Either way, if he resurfaces, he's dangerous. That night, the Audi came back. Parked across the street again, engine idling. I went to the window with my phone ready to film, but before I hit record, the lights cut and the car rolled away, slow and deliberate. A message. They were still out there, still watching. By Sunday, the news cycle had already shifted to the next scandal. That's how stories die in America. drowned in the noise of others. But for me, the quiet that followed felt heavier than any headline. Without court dates or cameras, there was nothing to do but wait and think. That's when the letter arrived. No stamp, no return address, just my name, printed neatly. Inside was a single sheet. You think they're finished. They're not. Trust no one. Lydia scanned it for prints. None. Ruiz logged it as potential intimidation. But something about the handwriting nagged at me. Too steady, too deliberate. It wasn't a threat written in anger. It was a warning. 3 days later, we learned who had sent it. Not from the FBI, not from Lydia. He found me himself. I was leaving the grocery store, pushing a cart full of paper bags, when a man stepped out from between two cars. He was thin, gray-haired, and wearing a county-issued windbreaker that had seen better decades. In his left hand, he held a plastic envelope, and in his right, a cheap flip phone. "Mr. Cole," he said quietly, "don't yell. Don't call anyone. I'm Harlan Dean, the missing county records officer." Every hair on my neck stood up. "You wrote the letter?" I asked. He nodded once. "Had to. They'll be monitoring my calls. Cameras, too. You've got less than 5 minutes before someone realizes I've gone off-grid." I glanced around the parking lot, families, shopping carts, normal life, and realized the normalcy was cover. "What do you want from me?" "To give you something before they find me." He handed over the plastic envelope. Inside were 2 thumb drives and a handwritten note. "If this reaches daylight, I'm already gone. What's on them?" "Everything," he said. "Permits, off-book transfers, a list of names you haven't heard yet." He leaned closer. "They weren't just stealing land. They were cleaning money for people who don't want headlines. If the feds think Hastings was the top, they're wrong." "Who's above them?" I asked. He shook his head. "You don't want to know." Then he turned, merged with the crowd, and was gone. I sat in my truck for 10 minutes before I could start the engine. The thumb drives felt like live grenades in my pocket. Lydia needed to see them, but something in Harlan's tone made me hesitate. If there were names above the Hastings, who did those names belong to? Investors? Politicians? People who owned both the courtroom and the camera? I drove home the long way, switching lanes, checking mirrors. Paranoia had become habit. When I finally pulled into the driveway, the front door was ajar by an inch. I froze. I backed away, called Lydia, then the sheriff's office. By the time deputies arrived, whoever had been inside was gone. Nothing stolen, nothing broken, but a faint smell of cigarette smoke hung in the hall. On the kitchen table lay a single playing card, Queen of Spades. The deputies shrugged it off as a prank, but Lydia didn't. "It's a signature," she said over the phone. "Someone letting you know they were inside and didn't need to take anything." "Who does that?" "People who expect you to understand the message." She told me to bring the drives to her office immediately. I didn't tell her I'd already copied them to a hidden folder on a separate device. Something in my gut said insurance never hurt. That night, we plugged the first drive into her air-gapped laptop. The screen filled with folder names, dates, project codes, scanned permits. Lydia opened one at random. It was a PDF of an internal memo from a bank in New Mexico, same pattern of false liens used in Ridgeway. Another folder contained donation ledgers, elected officials, both parties, thousands of dollars funneled through shell committees. Lydia's voice dropped to a whisper. "This isn't just property fraud. This is racketeering with political cover." The second drive was worse. Video files, surveillance clips. One showed Preston Hastings meeting a man in a private hangar. The metadata timestamp was 3 months before the first court hearing. The man's face turned toward the camera just long enough for us to recognize him. Senator Alan Roth, head of the State Finance Committee. Lydia exhaled. "We need to get this to Ruiz, tonight." But when she called the FBI number, it went straight to voicemail. Keller's too. We left messages. No response. At 2 a.m., Lydia's office security cameras went dark. The feed blinked, froze, then returned to static. We packed the drives, left through the back exit, and drove separate cars toward Denver. I kept the backup hidden under my seat. Halfway there, my headlights caught a shape lying across the road, a fallen branch, freshly cut. I slowed, rolled past, and noticed tire tracks in the ditch. Someone had been waiting. I kept going, heart slamming. In the rearview mirror, 2 headlights flared to life. They followed for 30 miles, always just far enough back that I couldn't see the plate. When I took the off-ramp toward the FBI field office, they peeled away into the night. Inside the lobby, Ruiz was waiting, bleary-eyed but alert. "We got your call," she said. "You did the right thing." I handed her the drives. "Whoever's backing them knows you're closing in," she nodded grimly. "We're moving our safe house protocols. You and Ms. Tran will have federal protection starting now. I'll need to debrief you in the morning. Where's Keller?" Her eyes flicked down. "He's missing. Last ping from his phone was near the foothills, same place Dean's car turned up." The words felt like a trapdoor opening under my feet. Back at the motel the FBI had arranged, I couldn't sleep. The air smelled of bleach and fear. Around 4 a.m., my burner phone buzzed. Unknown number. One message, too late. Check the news. I opened my laptop. Every local station carried the same headline. County records officer found dead near reservoir. Apparent suicide. Harlan Dean. I shut the lid and sat in the dark until sunrise. Morning light came slow and gray through the thin motel curtains. Every sound, the pipes ticking, the neighbor's TV, felt like it could be a signal. I made coffee in the plastic machine, burned my tongue on the first sip, and called Lydia. She already knew. "They're saying suicide," she said, voice rough. "Single gunshot, no note. He warned me 3 days ago. That doesn't sound like someone ready to give up." "No, it doesn't," she agreed. "But proving otherwise won't be easy." Ruiz texted. "She's driving up from Denver with a team." When Ruiz arrived 2 hours later, she looked 10 years older than yesterday. "We found Keller's car near the same reservoir. No body yet, just tire tracks. Whoever's cleaning house knows our routes." "So Dean didn't kill himself," I said. Her silence was the answer. We moved to a secure conference room in the county annex. Windowless. Fluorescent, too cold. Ruiz laid out printouts from the drives. Dean's data connects Ridgeway to 4 other projects in New Mexico, Utah, and Nevada. All share one silent investor, an offshore trust called Viridian Holdings. We've traced payments through a Swiss intermediary, then back into a U.S. PAC chaired by Senator Roth. "The guy from the hangar video," I said. She nodded. "And there's more. Viridian's attorney of record is Robert Keir, Hastings' lawyer," Lydia murmured. "He's been orchestrating this from both ends." Ruiz spread the next sheet, maps, red lines between states. "Dean was probably trying to give us this whole picture before they cut him off." I stared at the lines until they blurred. "So what happens now?" "Now," Ruiz said, "we make it official. We'll convene a federal grand jury, seize Summit Capital's accounts, and subpoena Roth's financial disclosures. But we'll need you to testify again, this time under seal." I agreed before I even thought about it. Then she handed me a folder marked Witness Protection Enrollment, Preliminary. I didn't open it. I just said, "I'm not running." Ruiz's expression softened. "Mr. Cole, they've killed 2 people. You're next on their list whether you testify or not." Then I guess I'd rather testify. That night, they moved me to a different motel under a false name. 2 agents sat in a car outside, headlights off. Lydia stayed in Denver preparing motions. We texted short sentences. "Alive?" "Yes," that was enough. I kept replaying Dean's voice in my head. "You don't want to know who's above them." Maybe I didn't, but curiosity is its own gravity. I opened my laptop, accessed the hidden copy of the drives, and started digging. Ruiz would hate it, but waiting felt worse. Folder 19 caught my eye. Consulting contracts. Inside were PDFs signed by Viridian Holdings and a subsidiary I'd never seen, North Stream Energy Partners. The signatory on one contract wasn't Hastings or Keir, it was Alan Roth Jr., the senator's son. The document referenced a land exchange agreement in Wyoming scheduled for March, 6 weeks away. New development, same pattern. They were still operating, still expanding even as the investigation closed in. Viridian had built an engine too large to stop overnight. I printed the page and drove it to Ruiz first thing in the morning. She read it twice, then looked up sharply. "This isn't public?" "Hidden folder, subdirectory in the drives. Dean must have buried it," she swore under her breath. "This changes everything. If Roth's family is still active, we're dealing with an ongoing conspiracy. We'll need surveillance. By afternoon, I was sitting in a nondescript sedan with Ruiz and a local marshal outside a private airstrip south of Boulder. A small jet gleamed on the tarmac, Roth Jr. in sunglasses boarding with two men I didn't recognize. Ruiz snapped photos with a telephoto lens. "Destination file says Cheyenne," she whispered. "Same route Hastings used." The jet lifted into the sky, silver against the haze. For a moment, the sound vibrated through the car like an omen. Back at the field office, Ruiz met with her team while I waited in a hallway that smelled of paper and burnt coffee. A bulletin board showed 2 columns, confirmed connections and unknowns. My name was under protected witness. Keller's and Dean's photos had black borders. I felt like the last man at a wake. That night, Ruiz called my motel room. "Cole, they're issuing warrants for Kieran Roth Jr. by morning. Stay put, no calls, no emails. Is Lydia safe?" "She's in a federal safe site, guarded. She asked me to tell you to sleep." I thanked her and hung up, though sleep was impossible. Around 2 a.m., I heard a soft knock. 3 taps, identical to the ones Dean had used. My pulse jumped. I crossed the room, looked through the peephole. No one there. Just an envelope taped to the door. Inside, a single photograph. Me talking to Ruiz at the airstrip that afternoon, taken from maybe 50 feet away. On the back, one line written in neat block letters. "We see everything." I called Ruiz immediately. "They know your movements," I said. "Our surveillance is compromised." Her reply was quiet. "I know. We're moving you at dawn." I didn't hang up for a long time after she disconnected. The silence in that motel room was thick enough to taste. Somewhere outside, a car engine idled, then faded into the dark. By sunrise, I realized the investigation wasn't just about fraud anymore. It was about survival and truth that someone very powerful wanted buried. And I was standing right on top of it. Dawn came with the color of old ash. I hadn't slept, just sat on the edge of the motel bed listening for engines that never came. When the knock finally sounded, it was Ruiz and 2 marshals. "Pack light," she said. "We're relocating you to a federal transport site until the indictments are served." I shoved a few clothes into a duffel and followed them out to an unmarked SUV. The air smelled like wet asphalt and exhaustion. We drove north, away from the city, through hills still silver with frost. Ruiz rode shotgun, laptop open on her knees. She looked carved out of resolve. "Kieran Roth Jr. are in custody," she said without looking up. "We picked them up an hour ago, both claiming they're patsies." Hastings' counsel filed motions to suppress the email, but the judge denied them. "It's moving fast." "Good," I said. "Faster means less time for whoever's left to clean up." "That's what I thought, too," she said, closing the laptop. "But there's a snag. Viridian's board filed for liquidation last night, hours before the warrants hit. Someone inside the bureau leaked our timeline." My stomach sank. "You think it's one of your own?" Ruiz didn't answer. The silence was worse than any yes. We reached a warehouse outside Fort Collins. Inside, rows of temporary workstations glowed under fluorescent lights. Agents moved like ghosts between cubicles, murmuring into radios. Keller's photo hung on a corkboard beside Dean's. Someone had pinned a small paper flag above each name. A young analyst approached Ruiz with a printout. "Encrypted message just came through a foreign relay," she said. "Addressed to you." Ruiz scanned it, frowned, and handed it to me. It was only one sentence. "You're feeding a wolf and calling it a watchdog. No signature, no traceable origin." Before I could ask, an alarm shrieked. High, electronic, relentless. Ruiz's team scattered to monitors. One screen showed live footage of a convoy burning on a mountain road. "That's our evidence transport," someone shouted. "Unit Charlie 7, do you copy? Static." Then a man's voice, breathless. "We're hit! Bridge 12!" And the line died. Ruiz grabbed a headset. "Get the highway patrol there now. Lock down the perimeter!" She turned to me, face drained of color. "Those trucks carried half the physical evidence. Bank servers, documents, everything Dean gave us." "How?" "They knew the route. Someone fed it to them." For the next 6 hours, the room buzzed with reports. Smoke, debris, no survivors. By afternoon, the official story on every network was accidental fuel explosion. I knew better. So did Ruiz. That night, she called Lydia on a secure line. "We lost the convoy," she said flatly. "Half the case is gone," Lydia's voice cracked through the speaker. "What about the digital copies?" "Still intact, but if they compromise our systems—" "They won't," I cut in. "I have backups offline." Ruiz stared at me. "Where?" "Somewhere safe." She didn't press, maybe because she saw that I wouldn't say more. 2 days later, Ruiz moved me again, this time to a cabin in the foothills, irony not lost on either of us. 2 agents stayed on the property. We were supposed to wait for the grand jury indictments to be unsealed. It should have felt like protection. Instead, it felt like being bait. At night, I walked the porch and listened to the forest breathe. Every snapping twig made me reach for the phone. One evening, I caught a flash of light through the trees, white, rhythmic. Morse code? A camera? I raised my binoculars. A figure in a dark jacket stood 50 yards away, then melted into the shadows. The agent searched the area. Nothing. But the next morning, a small drone lay wrecked in the grass by the fence, its lens smashed. Someone had been watching. Ruiz sent a tech team. They found fragments of storage, enough to confirm the feed was transmitting to a relay in New Mexico, the same region tied to Viridian's other projects. "They're cleaning witnesses now," she said quietly. "Dean, Keller. Maybe us next." That night, unable to sit still, I opened the remaining data from Dean's drives. Buried deep was a folder labeled Contractor Logs. Inside, invoices for security consulting billed to Viridian Holdings by a company called Stonepath Solutions. The signatory, former federal agent Nicholas Keir, Robert Keir's brother. So the leak wasn't just inside the bureau. It was family. I printed the file, hid a copy beneath a floorboard, and waited until morning to show Ruiz. She read it once, swore softly, and said, "We'll need corroboration before we move on this. If we accuse the wrong person, the whole case implodes." She looked at me, eyes hard but tired. "You wanted the truth, Mr. Cole? This is what it looks like. Messy, dangerous, full of holes." "Then let's fill them," I said. We didn't get the chance. Just after noon, the power cut. The hum of the fridge, the low chatter of the agent's radios, gone. Outside, an engine roared. A black SUV skidded up the dirt road, dust boiling behind it. The agents drew weapons, shouting commands. The vehicle door opened. A figure stepped out, hands raised. It was Preston Hastings. His suit was torn, his face streaked with blood and road grime, eyes wide with something close to panic. "I need protection," he shouted. "You don't understand. They're coming for all of us." Ruiz ordered him to the ground, cuffed him herself. "Who's coming, Preston?" He looked straight at me. "You were right," he said hoarsely. "It goes higher. Roth wasn't the top. Viridian is just a mask. You stop now, you might live." Then he fainted. We carried him inside. Ruiz called for a medevac, but before the chopper arrived, Preston came to and grabbed my wrist. His whisper was a rasp. "North Stream, not a company. It's a program." Before I could ask what that meant, his pulse stuttered and stopped. The medics worked for 10 minutes. Nothing. When they zipped the bag, Ruiz stared at me. "A program," she repeated. "What the hell kind of program uses real estate to hide its tracks?" I didn't have an answer. But I knew one thing. Whatever North Stream was, it had just killed the man who built Ridgeway Estates, and it wasn't finished yet.